Hey guys, Paul here from familywheels.ca with another car review for your growing family. And this week on the program, well, it's a little bit of a ride down memory lane for me because this past weekend we left our kid with his grandparents here in the city. We left our dog with a couple of friends and we hit the road into the mountains for a ski trip, just the two of us in a Volkswagen. Now, soft spot for me, this brand, because my first ever two cars were two-wheel drive Volkswagens, and man, they got me into the mountains of New Mexico, Colorado, Alaska, wherever. I got far deep into the woods with a two-wheel drive Volkswagen. That's exactly what we're going to do here this week, but we're doing it in a slightly more modern version of what I was getting around in, the 2016 Jetta. Now, from the outside, it might look exactly the same as the 2015 Jetta, but there are some new interior features, some great new infotainment system technology, as well as a brand new 1.4-liter turbocharged engine on board. It's supposed to be more efficient, more powerful, and yet funner to drive. So let's take a look at this new Jetta, see how it stacks up, put it through all of our standardized tests. Stick around, I'll tell you all about it. I always see the size of these bags. So the first thing that I noticed here with the Jetta when I got in is that for a compact sedan, it's actually pretty big. I mean, I'm a tall guy with lots of headroom and comfortable space up here for the driver. We've got a good size second row. The trunk is pretty big. The same went for that Civic that I was in a couple of weeks ago on the show. You know, it's gotten bigger for its 2016 redesign. So it's interesting to see how this segment is just kind of growing over time. The next thing that I noticed with the Jetta is that, you know, I'm in the second to the bottom tier here in the Jetta. So you can get into the Trendline trim for about $16,000. And in the Trendline Plus trim that I'm in here today, we've thrown in an automatic 6-speed gearbox, and it's about $20,000, just a little bit over. But it's still pretty basic. I mean, you compare this to a $20,000 Kia or Hyundai or Mazda, and you're seeing a lot more bells and whistles on the interior and a slightly better finished interior as well. There are a lot of cheap plastics around. You know, I don't have dual zone automatic climate control. It's these old school switches right here. It's fairly basic. Yes, you are getting things like Bluetooth connectivity. You're getting a backup camera. You're getting a pretty good infotainment system, which now includes, by the way, mirroring technology that allows your smartphone to be mirrored directly onto the infotainment system, so you can play your smartphone's music, or you can use the smartphone's navigational systems, or you can send a text, or you can even access some of the apps that you've downloaded onto your phone right here on the screen in front of you. And you can use that, by the way, for both iPhones and Android phones. So that's kind of cool. But it's not until you get into some of the higher end trims like the GLI Autobahn, the top end trim of the Jetta, which is going to be about $35,000, that you start to see more soft touch surfaces and leather seats and higher end materials. But it kind of seems to me like the $20,000 price tag here on this Trendline Plus trim is going toward things that you can't really see as much. So, you know, the door handles, the suspension, the steering all feel really solid. And this 1.4-liter turbo is a lot of fun to drive. You know, it's interesting, that Civic that I was in a couple of weeks ago now has a 1.5-liter turbo available as well. And when I compare the two of them, they're quite similar to each other. Very eager and a lot of fun to get around in, yet still quite fuel efficient. So I'm seeing an average here of about 7 liters per 100 kilometers. That's a mix of highway and city driving this past week. And for a turbocharged engine that, you know, if you do kind of step on it a little bit, is going to spool up that turbo and affect your fuel efficiency, is really quite good. What makes the Jetta a little bit different to the Civic is the fact that regardless of the trim level that you get, you're going to have a turbo on board. This little zippy engine has replaced that 2-liter, rather old non-turbo engine that had been in the Jetta for eons. And by the way, if you're wondering when you'll be able to see a turbo diesel in the Jetta again, I asked Volkswagen and they said not until the whole Dieselgate emissions scandal blows over and they're able to deal with those issues. So it could be a while. Okay, so we've already talked about some of these cheaper finishes here on this trim that I'm in today in the Jetta, but there are some other things that kind of get my goat here on the interior as well. First up is this voice recognition software, which is installed in the infotainment system, but if I want to use it, I have to go to my local dealership, pay them to unlock it for me. It's like, it really seems unnecessarily chintzy. Just let me have access to it. Weird. Another thing that seems really odd to me are the seats. They're really, really uncomfortable. My wife and I both commented on this. After a few hours of driving, we were so ready to get out of here. They hug you in all the wrong places. There's no lumbar support at all, with no adjustability here for the lower back, you know, one of those bars that you can adjust. Things that are available to you on the higher trims, yes, but it'd be nice to have a slightly more comfortable seat in the lower end Jettas as well. All right, let's take a look at this back seat now here, because as you can see, if you've got a tall driver up front, I'm 6'2", and I've set my driver's seat all the way back, you really are left with limited legroom, quite a bit less legroom than we would have seen in the Civic a couple weeks ago. But if you've got shorter drivers, say under 5'10", not going to be a problem at all, and a fairly comfortable second row. One thing that seems weird to me is that normally you're able to fold the seats forward from here, and then use that, you know, for larger items, access the cargo capacity, extra cargo capacity in the trunk, that sort of thing. Not the case here. The only place to fold the seats forward is from this tab on the trunk, which is handy, but it would be nice to have both options. Now, speaking of the trunk, holy cow, look at the size of this thing. We've got our standard amount of gear in here, a couple bags of groceries, a diaper bag, a stroller, a backpack, and a soccer ball, and I've still got tons of space. I wasn't expecting that size of a trunk, but it is so deep that trying to get stuff from the far reaches of the trunk can be a little bit of a challenge. Now, something else that I really like about the size of the Jetta is how well it takes car seats. Our rear-facing car seat is in place, and I've still got about 12 and a half inches of legroom here, which, you know, compared to some SUVs that we've tested, it's even better than those. And you can see I've got lots of headroom in here, lots of legroom still, so not a problem at all. But one thing with the Jetta, if you want leather seats, you're going to have to go to one of those high level trims, the GLI Autobahn, and that's going to cost you a fair bit of money. Here in these lower level trims, you're getting these cloth seats, which are almost like quilted paper towel, and these would be really hard to keep clean with families and family messes. I've got our yogurt here. I know this makes people cringe, but this is a really good test. You can see I'm going to smear some yogurt in here, and all those sponge pockets, we might as well call them, are just absorbing that yogurt, and it's going to make it hard to get out of there. So something to keep in mind on whether you're going to choose to go with the leather or the cloth option here in the Jetta. So when I got in touch with Volkswagen to find out about the target demographic for this car, I was just kind of a little bit curious. They got in touch with a fairly serious piece of auto industry jargon, which is, quote, the value-conscious buyer who still wants a high degree of driver engagement, unquote. And yes, it is jargony, but you know what? It's pretty much spot on, because this trim that I'm in here today, pretty pared down basic car, but when you start driving it, it's a lot of fun. I almost kind of consider it to be Audi light. You know, it's got a lot of the same buttons and switches and toggles on board here as you would find in an Audi. Now it has a turbocharged, zippy little fuel efficient engine on board like you would find in an Audi. So the big question becomes, would you rather spend $20,000 on a solid feeling little car like this Jetta, or $20,000 on a Hyundai or a Kia that has a lot more bells and whistles on board? I'd love to know your thoughts on this, because I think we could get a pretty good debate going here. You can leave a comment below. You can always find me on Twitter as well, @FamilyWheels, and the website, of course, familywheels.ca. Next week on the program, a totally different kind of review. I'm heading off on another ski trip, and this time around it's in a very large 2016 Toyota Tundra pickup truck. We'll see how that one stacks up for family living. Until then, make sure to check out the website and make sure to subscribe. I'd love to have you join our ranks, and we'll see you in 7 days in that great big Tundra.